Gotte again. Hello, Marco. And so you will tell us what, in your opinion, will be the next steps looking into the near future in interventional MRI in electrophysiological procedures. Please, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Jörg. Can you see my screen, my presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now I will talk about the same disclosures. I talked a couple of hours ago about the navigation, and this is where we are. So I left you in this situation where we have a advanced navigation and mapping system allowing us to control the scanner, have a 3D shell which allows us to navigate catheters into position based on active catheter tracking, as explained by the previous speaker as well. And we can control the scanner. So we are, from this perspective, ready to start doing more complex procedures. But before we can do more complex procedures, we have to realize that these procedures are also associated with more risk. So we have to take safety measures. And one of the safety measures is proper monitoring to identify incidents and unintended or unwanted arrhythmias like this. And we need also to be able to take measures to anticipate this. So the question is, can you defibrillate a subject in the scanner? And the answer is yes, as shown in this video. Of course, this is not what you intend to do for a patient, but this experiment demonstrates that the defibrillator can charge and decharge, give a shock. There are now better defibrillators, MR compatible, which are not so associated with these strong muscle contractions. So from this perspective, we have a monitoring tool and we have a device, an MR compatible defibrillator, which allows us to do more risky procedures associated with ventricular tachycardia and or ventricular fibrillation. Another important component not discussed before is the EKG recording in the MRI environment. And preferably we will have a 12-lead EKG recording system like we have as cardiologists at every corner in the hospital and in particular in the EP lab. We study this, we focus on improving the quality of the EKG recording, and this is a volunteer, but there are a lot of electrodes. We use the Myrtle system connected to the Advantage system from Invipore to come up with a 12-lead EKG system recording. And we try to improve the signals, since the signals are affected by the gradients applied to get the images and to track the position of the catheters. The EKG is affected by the magnetic hydrodynamic effect, and I will come to this later. There's always some baseline noise, and of course we can apply filtering, but electrophysiologists in particular do not like too much filtering, since then they cannot see the tiny details they look for to decide what to do and to decide if a procedure is completed. So it's a critical balance between filtering and a lot of noise in the MRI affecting the EKG. And of course, this is also the situation for the endocardial measurements, but the unique situation now is that we have endocardial catheters positioned and we can measure the endocardial potentials and we can obtain the surface potentials, and we can use this information to improve the quality and develop strategies to improve the quality of the 12-lead EKGs. What we do in Amsterdam is we acquire in patients, also patients scheduled for diagnostic scans, EKGs, to study in particular the magnetic hydrodynamic effect and the gradient-related noise. The magnetic hydrodynamic effect is a tough challenge, actually. It's the influence of the flow through the aorta, distorting the magnetic field and therefore also the EKG. And it is associated with the cardiac output and the heart rate. So it will always be present. It's one of the difficulties we will face. And an EKG in the MR will never look like an EKG we know. But we have to learn to look through the distortions to interpret these EKGs. But there are strategies to clean the EKG, but it will never be the same as a conventional EKG. On top of that, we have the gradient-induced artifacts, and this is easier to anticipate. And the reason for this is that the gradients do have a specific profile. So what we do is we look to the different sequences applied and the associated distortions on the EKG. And it turns out that is, of course, kind of logic. It turns out that there are specific patterns per sequence that give specific patterns of distortion on these EKGs. So this is knowledge you can obtain prior to scanning. You can incorporate this in your filter strategy, and for that reason, you will be able to improve the EKG quality. And this is again important for electrophysiologists and important for doing more risky procedures. Other strategies, I touched upon this a little bit in my previous talk, is that you scan to track, for instance, devices, but the North Star system also allows you to start to scan in bursts, so a kind of interrupted scanning. And then we only apply the tracking sequence to identify the position of the catheters in the heart. But it is there are short periods that there is no scanning performed, and within these periods you can also see a better quality EKG. Combined with this strategy, it is, in our opinion, acceptable for clinical applications. So what I mean is acceptable for electrophysiologists and to look for tiny details and to interpret the EKG in the way they are used to. And this is one of the strategies. We need to lower the barriers for interventionalists working in the conventional fluoroscopy space. Otherwise, they will never adopt this new technology. This is one of the key components, to my opinion. There's another aspect. If you start doing more complex ablations, we will be more frequently confronted with patients having a device. And the question is this feasible? Can we scan these patients in a proper way? And what is the effect of the presence of an ICD, for instance, while you are also advancing multiple catheters? And there's a decision to be made. Will you go for 2D or 3D scanning? In Amsterdam, we used a 3D strategy. So this is a 3D navigator-based whole heart scan to come up with a shell with the scar with the arrhythmic substrate scar. And the question is, can this also be achieved in patients with an ICD? And the answer is yes. So for who is not familiar, we scan a lot of patients with devices. So it's not a hard contraindication anymore. You will get decent images like these. And in particular, if you apply the 3D LGE strategy, even in the presence of ICDs, and you will observe over here the ICD lead, you can see clearly the tissue, and in this case, it is an ischemic cardiomyopathy with a lot of substrate in this particular area. You can segment this and you can upload this also into Northstar. So ICDs are not a barrier for getting proper images required to prepare yourself for the procedure. The equipment. This is an overview I've made a couple of years ago and I've updated it. If you start doing more complex interventional procedures, you need hemodynamic monitoring, you need the 12-lead EKG, you need the defibrillator, etc. Where are we? We do have a proper monitoring system at our disposal. And if people are interested, we are willing to support you and help you to make sure that you can also collect the data, store the data, and play with the data, as I've shown in my previous talk. This is important for sites and people who are interested in pressure measurements and collect the data and come up with other strategies, maybe non-invasive strategies, ultimately to determine pressures. We do have a 12-lead EKG recording system. Basically, there are two systems available. One is the Myrtle system, which is used by the sites who also use the equipment from Invicor. There's also and this Myrtle system is CE marked. There's also another system, it's called the PLEX Max, but it's a research system. It allows you more filter options, but it is for research and not meant to be used for routine clinical procedures. There is a defibrillator. We do have this defibrillator. It's provided by MIPM in Germany, but we have never used it. So we do not know how it will behave under the circumstances we do need it. We intend to test this in the next couple of weeks. Well, tracking is touched upon. We are able to track devices passively and actively. We have software, we have guide wires, but they are not at a level you would expect, and so that needs to be improved. Biotones is also still a challenge, and we do have catheters, and of course the audio and video equipment is also available for use in an MRI environment. So, to my opinion, the current status of all equipment required to start doing more complex procedures is something like this. Then, sidestep to improve imaging strategies, to improve the use of equipment, including catheters. We have developed an explanted MR-compatible bleeding pig heart model. So we take hearts from slaughter pigs. We can basically restart these hearts. These hearts beat on their own, and this heart is hooked up into a MR-compatible system. This allows us to look to the deformation. It's a way to avoid the use of animals. We can pioneer new imaging technologies. We can navigate devices as shown over here, and we can also ablate these hearts, and we can create ablation lesions. And since we do have the heart, and we can apply histology, we can basically relate actual histology to the virtual histology provided by MR, and this helps us to interpret these images, to understand what we do locally at a tissue level if we ablate these hearts, and also learn more about, okay, what are the details we have to look for to interpret it from a clinical perspective, what lesions we have created, what are the consequences of these lesions, and how should we improve or can we improve the strategy to make sure that we create durable lesions over time. We have done a lot of flutter cases like other sites have shown. That's important. You cannot start doing complex procedures before you have a team practicing the procedure. I show this image because there was a discussion about and driven by electrophysiologists who admit that the ablation of a lesion or location is tough because of the deformation of the heart. And this image shows you clearly the deformation, the stretching and shortening of the isthmus where you intend to ablate. And you can imagine that that affects the quality of the ablation lesion, and that we are now aware of this because we can make it visible. But this is also, of course, the case under fluoroscopy, but then you cannot see it. So we will get and do get a lot of information from imaging during ablation procedures, ranging from location, deformation, and position of catheters. And on top of that, we have the different imaging strategies, which gives us some information regarding the lesions created as shown over here as an overview. So I think that MR will be become an important support tool, instrument, way of ablating patients to improve the quality. And we also look to the different phenomena over time related to ablation creation to better understand how can we create durable lesions in one episode of ablation. If we start doing more complex procedures, we have also to cross the septum if we intend to perform left-sided ventricular ablation procedures. I already mentioned that there is a MR-compatible sheath that with built-in coils. You can advance a needle through this sheath, which is MR-compatible, of course, but it has no specific marker, so you can position the sheath based on the tracking coils. But once the sheath is in position and you push the needle towards the septum, you only can rely on the signal void, basically created by the needle itself. And this is an experiment we did in pigs, in a pig, but we have done multiple pigs to see how it worked. What is the imaging strategy that works to position your sheath, and how does it feel if you push the needle through the septum, and is this feasible, and can you maneuver subsequently a catheter into the left ventricle? So we've done this to practice ourselves, to prepare the team for doing ventricular ablations. This is a clinical case we did last Thursday, so 2 days ago. We did a flutter case, and once that was completed, so we completed the electrical anatomical map, we practiced basically as a team, so the imaging team and the interventionalist, the positioning of the sheath by using the ablation catheter and bring it into position. So this green area is the fossa ovalis, segmented. And you can see how the electrophysiologist maneuvers his catheter into position like it is the sheath with the needle. And you can see that this is relatively easily performed. We do this repeatedly to make sure that we are prepared for doing a transseptal puncture, and that would be the first transseptal puncture in human ever. And we are close to this moment based on these preparations. In the meantime, we have already performed a ventricular ablation. That was a 73-year-old man with symptomatic PVCs, and he was enrolled in the visible VT study by Imricor. We used this 1.5 scanner, the Avanto Fit scanner, and this is an overview of all the systems we used to do so, and this was the ablation strategy. And first, we created the 3D segmentation, and in this case, it is important to have a whole heart segmentation, including also the left side of the heart and the aorta. So it takes a little bit more time to acquire the images, and it takes also a little bit more time to segment. Then we advanced the catheters like shown before, and we started in the right ventricle, in the right ventricular outflow tract, since based on the EKGs, it was considered that it was the location of the arrhythmic substrate. We did an electrical anatomical map, so it was not shown before during other presentations, but the left lower panel shows you the creation of an electrical anatomical map. So the system allows you to create electrical anatomical maps in the magnet. And then we started to ablate in the right ventricular outflow tract, but that was not sufficient, so we could not suppress all PVCs. And finally, we decided to advance the catheter via the aorta into the LVOT. We did some measurements and also made a electrical anatomical map at the left side in the aortic root region. And finally, with 2 ablation points, 2 or 3, the PVCs were finally terminated. And up to date, there is no PVC recurrence in this particular patient. So this was a nice case for us to gradually step up the complexity of doing the invasive procedure, going from the right ventricle to the left ventricle via the aorta. And I think the next step will be and should be a transseptal puncture. After this ablation, after this ventricular ablation, we did some advanced imaging, and we have pioneered the twilight sequence. This is another important aspect which is not discussed in detail in the previous talks, but if you want to use the image data to guide you and to assess if ablation lesions are durable, acceptable, you can only do this using imaging strategies without the need for gadolinium, since if you have administered gadolinium, you cannot repeat that procedure. And the twilight imaging strategy allows you to visualize lesions without the need for contrast agent and in the presence of edema. Everyone knows that if you ablate, and that is in the first couple of minutes after the first ablation point, there is edema, so there's swelling of the tissue, there's more water content. It influences your ablation, but it also influences imaging. But the twilight strategy allows you to visualize in the presence of edema, still focal areas, spots associated with the ablation points. And we try to improve this image quality, but it is a way to identify the lesions created without the need for gadolinium and in a 3D fashion. This is an overview of what we have done in this particular patient. So we feel pretty comfortable for doing other complex cases. what I've not mentioned in detail is that we also practice bail-out procedures. Our scanner is located at the Department of Radiology, which is not close to the cath labs. So we have to developed a strategy how to perform a bail-out procedure, take the patient out, or do first an ablation inside the bore. We have a protocol for this. Hopefully it is not necessary, but if it is necessary, we are prepared. And we look with confidence to the future to do the first transseptal left-sided ablation procedure. So we think with the overview of all the tools and all the talks of today that the equipment, tools, and technology are available. The multidisciplinary team is trained. If another if someone else wants to do or start doing intervention procedures, we are also willing to help you to train the team. We've developed a kind of educational program for this, and it's important since you bring two worlds together, the imaging world and the EP world, and it is important that people are well trained, start doing more complex procedures. We have an imaging strategy and a workflow prepared, and the bail-out procedures is practiced. So we think ready for the more complex procedures. I thank you for the attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Interesting.
Okay.
So I introduced Marco, so I think it's my task also to say thank you to you. So Marco, it was really very encouraging presentation with some critical aspects what we have to do still, and also a very good optimistic view that we will be able to go for more complex lesions in the very near future.
Well, to be honest, we have to. So in the previous talks, it was clear that already 2 decades ago, interventional MR was pioneered. So there is a kind of promise, and we have to deliver as a community. And doing flutter cases in the MR is just a step up, but that is not the end goal. So we have to move forward and do more complex procedures. And I think that the added value of MRI guided procedures is also in the more complex procedures themselves.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think flutter ablation is the learning terrain. It's a learning ground to get experience with the techniques, to feel comfortable with all the elements. And once you have that you go for other applications. So we did 5 cases now, but even with these 5 cases, you see really a steep learning curve. After a few cases, everybody who is in the team knows what to do. We do rehearsals of taking the patient out of the scanner room for resuscitation if needed, such things. And after a few cases, you see that there's some training builds up, some routine builds up, and I think there will be many centers, I hope, in the near future that can do a few flutter ablations to train and then to approach the ultimate goal, which will be the ventricle. Yes.
Yeah. But at this stage, we still have to be very careful as a community. So if we do this not in a proper way, and there are incidents, it will affect the whole community.
Yeah, that's of course that you are fully right. We should advance, but slowly, correctly, not too fast, so that there is no complication. You can have a complication after 100.
You can always have a complication, but you have to be prepared and show that you were prepared. And a technical challenge is still the quality of the EKG recording. That's critical to electrophysiologists. It will never meet the quality, the in-bore obtained EKG will never meet the quality of a non-in-bore obtained EKG. So they have to learn to look to other aspects of these EKGs, and we have to come up with better strategies to clean the EKG as much as possible. If we cannot solve this, it will be a roadblock preventing us from doing more complex procedures.
I talked to our electrophysiologists, and they exactly say the same thing.
Yeah. So we can have nice monitors, excellent sequences, and a lot of devices. But if we do not solve this, it's the same story like the data recording of pressure data. If we cannot solve this, or if the industry does not solve that, it will not fly. It will just remain a research tool in a specific center willing to spend a lot of time on this. But I think it's our task to break this field open, redefine the use of MR. It is not an innovation, it is a revolution, and we need data storage, and we need a proper EKG as one of the critical factors.
I think in this regard, it's very interesting that it was nice what Vivek demonstrated, that you can take normal good quality MR images, you put noise on it, and you let the AI learn to get the output, which is then a good image. So I remember when we started this machine learning, there were 100,000 of images needed to train. Now you can train on a few hundred images because you do a data augmentation procedure. So you twist the images in all directions, and so you create artificial images to learn. So I think we could take hundreds, thousands of ECGs, distort them, and let the AI train to restore the original ECG. So I think at least there is a huge amount of training data, and so I'm optimistic that this will be solved. Yeah.
It will be solved ultimately, and we have to take advantage of the knowledge about the gradient profiles, for instance. But for now, there's no system. So the information is already there. We know how the gradient profile looks like. But at this stage, there's no system which incorporates this information and uses it for cleaning up the EKG. The magnetodynamic effect is the tough one, since you cannot influence the magnetodynamic effect. And you can imagine if you have patients with low voltages, for instance, due to extensive ischemic cardiomyopathy, that it will become even more difficult to come up with a good EKG quality. We will see what happens, but this is research, right?
Yeah. I think we know the anatomy of the aorta. We know the flow profiles in the aorta. So in principle, we know the source of distortion. So there is like a distortion, and we have the factors that is linked to the distortion. So maybe there is also something to use there. I think,
but to a certain extent, it is random. So it's related to the cardiac output, the heart rate, the fluctuation in the cardiac output. And you cannot turn it off. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Listening these very nice presentations through this afternoon, I have to confess that myself, as a person working with technologies, I am satisfied. I have very, very limited doubt that artificial intelligence is going to play very soon a pivotal role in electrophysiology and sudden cardiac death. It is indeed, this is what we need, the supermind to identify subtle, small changes in ECG, to identify electrograms, and to give us another view of the pathophysiology of the arrhythmias and sudden death. No doubt that MRI is a fantastic technique which could add a lot of new data. And in this complex field, electrophysiology, if we had to combine AI with these images and these findings, I'm sure that the results will be much more advanced. My only concern is, allow me to say, the paradigm of stereotaxis. Stereotaxis was another device, nothing to do with MRI, but it was also a big, heavy, important magnetic navigation system. used in electrophysiology and interventional cardiology, as you know. So, at the first glance, stereotaxis came to push ahead through its technology these two domains. But at the end of the day, if I am correct, in Europe at least, the stereotaxis has very limited access. I know many countries that they have zero stereotaxis used.
Yeah.
So the question is why? It is because the complexity around the technology. I mean, you need more space, more money, and as I said many times today, I found this opportunity, very optimal collaboration between radiologists and cardiology. And my only concern for the next 10 years around these clinical and experimental techniques that you presented today is to which degree this technology is going to conquer. For sure, some North countries like Germany, like Holland, like UK and France will develop some similar systems in the next 10 years. I don't like to be very pessimistic, but I doubt about, possibly in Barcelona and in Madrid, one or two, but I doubt about the size of the clinical application of the magnet systems, of MRI in clinical electrophysiology for the next 10 years. If I
we will see, but that's the reason why we reach out to other sites that we are willing to support with what we have learned with technology we have developed. So we have to build up a mass. But I think the moment is today. The moment is the biggest moment.
You are doing well. You are doing very well. I don't like to discourage you at all. But here we have to be a little bit not over optimistic, not pessimistic. We have to find a way, and the only way to find a solution is to liberalize the use of MRI in general among different subspecialties.
I think that is currently going on. So there, in particular, Siemens has a strong vision on the future and MRI-guided interventions. They've developed a new generation low-field scanner with a wide bore, meant to be used for a wide range of interventional procedures. It's not just cardiac, it's also about ablating tumors, taking biopsies, potentially vascular procedures. So the moment is high.
I miss what you said. New systems are developed for different areas, but possibly you carry out a new data that I'm not aware. Do you see more liberty in the use of MRI among non-cardiologists, among non-radiologists? This is my question. For me, working so many years centrally in Brussels and in ESC, the only thing that I believe could make a change is a directive of the European Union. Only if the European Union has decided to have to make a directive which is going to say, excuse me, MRI could be used by any specialty if a limited experience is proven. Otherwise,
I think we are currently, and also with this symposium, actually, we are building up leverage, right? So this is the spearhead of the community using interventional NMR, and this is the biggest community up to date. So if we do this in the right way, I think we will manage to get this done.
Yeah.
Maybe I can add something in what happens in Switzerland. We will get a new tariff next year, and interventions are paid as type of intervention. It is atrial, ventricular, and so on. And it's not written down which technique is used to do it. So the electrophysiologist is paid by the action, by the procedure, and you can do in conventional, you can use intracardiac echo, you can use MR. It doesn't matter what you use. So I think this is, I was in some committees, so I looked at, there is never a mentioning which technique will be used. It's only paid for what you do, not how, with which tool you do it. And so I think in principle for the invasive things, we are quite safe because we are paid by the act and not by the machine. But I also want to say that, for example, here in Lausanne, we have an excellent collaboration with the radiologists. They are friends. The former chair of radiology, he helped a lot to build up this center here. He called me and said, hey, Jörg, you have to do this. There is money. You should call them and so on. So he helped a lot. So we work together with the radiologists, and this is the best way to do it. But I think we should also try to get the contact with them.
Yeah, excuse me, Professor Zwitter. This is not, sorry, with the highest appreciation in what you said, but with the easiness to speak, as I am very experienced in pan-European realities, after 35 years working for ESC, the answer here is not to develop personal relationships. No, not at all. Here, what we need, are you radiologist or cardiologist?
I was initially cardiologist, and I'm still cardiologist, yeah.
Okay, great. So, in my opinion, if the political dogma is, please try to collaborate nicely and kindly with the radiologists, is not correct. Here, what we need is to demolish, to evaporate the close professional and economic interest of this club. And this club, in many countries, have the same characteristics. The bosses in the hospitals are getting synonymous to the size of their devices. The biggest the device is, the biggest the egoism. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is clear. It is, you see, once when I was 25 years, 30 years younger, I was shy to express certain views. You see, I was coming from a small country from the south. After 35 years working in everything, senior position in Europe around cardiology, I feel comfortable to speak and to talk about things that nobody else has the balls to speak. And this is my characteristic. That's why I have fanatic friends in many countries, because I'm speaking fairly and clearly. Here, the radiologists don't like to liberalize their rights, because behind this is strong economic interest. So to say that in Lausanne, you have marvelous relationships with the boss, okay, this is a bless for you personally, but this is not a dogma. So that's why I said, and actually this idea is just now came to my mind, that if we like to see something moving in front of these developments, and if cancer, look, if cancer is going to be much more, let's say, needed MRI, this is good, because under the huge pressure of the cancer patients, of the cardiology patients, the European Union could edit a directive, a regulatory something, to say, excuse me, who has the right to, and here we have to think, and I like to discuss with Thomas Lusser, because this is a strategic issue for us, for the European cardiology.
It's indeed a big issue. So it should not be dependent on relationships. This is just the policy.
Absolutely.
And the technology is now, it seems that it is owned by the radiology for several reasons.
Yeah.
But I think that the development will even go faster if we would have more access as cardiologists to this technology, and that does not make sense.
But we
And
need
I
that.
think that Siemens has developed a strategy, since there's a reason why they have developed a dedicated interventional suite, also allowing to do procedures that never will be performed by radiologists. A radiologist will not perform a cardiac ablation.
I'm not sure, Marco, I'm not sure that, you see, we have to be cynically and openly sincere without to make mistakes. Industry like Siemens, I'm not sure that they like to go to lobby to the European Union for us, the cardiologists.
No.
Okay.
They will not lobby for us, but on the other hand, cardiologists are early adapters in general. We embrace new technology. We are flexible in embedding new technology in clinical practice. We are a way ahead compared to other disciplines, and they see it as a new market. They see it as a new market.
And coronary angiography, this is a good example. Theoretically, as you know, and even in my department, in university departments, the still radiologists have an upper, let's say, a role, not close to us, because the devices belong to their own, theoretically, belong to their own departments. Okay, they are a little bit bossy, but not much. They don't like anything that is moving, like the heart. Okay.
But I think with this meeting, well, it was an excellent day until now, talking about also interventional and other topics, of course, as well. But I think there's a momentum, and maybe we should offline discuss this indeed with the ESC, that the technology is now ready to start doing more complex procedures, that there are more sites willing to participate. And that from the clinical perspective, from the daily clinical perspective, there is now more interest and need, and we need the support of the ESC, and we have to discuss this maybe with the European Union. Yeah, maybe you're right. But we've never had before such a critical mass as we have today. That is what we have to realize. And we can also lose this momentum. People get disappointed if it does not come off the ground. We make promises but we cannot deliver. Then it will disappear. And this is the opportunity to move forward. This is the moment that we have the biggest critical mass, and we have to develop a strategy. We have to be smart, but if we do nothing, we just proceed, then maybe we will make some technical advances, but it will never become a widespread clinical adoption.
I have one question that I would like to hear your opinion on it. Here, for example, in Switzerland, in universities where the relationship is not top with radiologists, they just hire a radiologist and he signs the letter. So they run everything, they know the sequences, they do the exams, and they have a radiologist who signs so that you can get the reimbursement from the insurance companies. That would be a very practical way to say, okay, if they don't collaborate, I hire a radiologist, he signs the things, and we do what we want to do. What is your opinion on that? That would also put some pressure on the radiologists, because they see if they don't negotiate, they will lose it anyway.
This is a clever practice, and in the past, indeed, many times we thought about this practice. I said, okay, we are going to recruit a radiologist in our department. The problem is that depends from each country. In these cases, radiologists are acting like unionists. You know, unionists, what does mean? They are protecting their rights. And for sure, these certain radiologists will be under huge pressure from his own community, because he or she will be treated like traitor. Okay, don't underestimate these realities. Don't underestimate these realities. What you said now, it was one of my thoughts about 25 years ago, no, 10 years ago, in Creta when I was the boss there, and I said, okay, so why not to hire a radiologist, and potentially it is a solution. Yes, potentially it is a solution. But you see, if you are working in a private sector, everything is easy. If you are working in the university sector, how the hell I will persuade the administration, even if I have the money, 200, I don't know how much is the cost of an MRI, if I had the money, how to persuade the general administration in the hospital that this device is coming only for the cardiology department, it belongs to the cardiology department and does not belong to the general radiology facilities. You cannot imagine how much difficulties here they are. Of course, it could happen in some countries. For example, I had a discussion recently with a guy from Greece who is an excellent cardiologist, but also he is working in imaging, etc. And he told me that he found the money, they develop facilities totally independent to run his research projects, etc., regarding not an MRI. I think he is working with computed tomography, but anyway, the same. But depends from the country. As far as I know, UK is one of the few countries that cardiologists could freely work. At the same time, here in Greece, but not only in Greece, I'm curious to know what is happening in France, for example. What is anybody
also in Italy? Also in Italy.
Yeah.
In Italy.
Same story in Italy. They even get stronger to avoid any non-radiologists to have access to MR machines. So Italy is in a bad direction from the point of view of cardiologists. Yeah.
So better. But do they have the right cardiologists to run MRI?
No.
No, they are restricted even more and more.
More and more and more. Yes, you see,
Yeah.
and yeah, because the radiologists and the radiology society is very well organized. You cannot imagine how much they protect their rights. That's why I said that the only way for us to see more liberal tactics in MRI, not in the rest, is only if the European Union has been persuaded to protect and to intervene. Otherwise, I cannot see anything changing. Yeah. Of course, we can in the private sector, the things could be different. Okay, yeah. In the private sector, if you have a small clinic, if you have something, you can say, I hire a radiologist and I can make anything. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But in the big university hospitals and public hospitals, there is a real problem. And please, I don't know what is happening in your hospitals, but after so many years in this business, I have concluded, as I said before, that the egoism of the bosses of the radiology department is at the same level like the size of the devices they are running. Big devices, huge. So they behave to the rest like to be, they have an authoritarian style everywhere. And I am pondering why the hell is such similar attitude. At least
but what we detected, what we saw when we worked together with radiology, cardiology, is we realized that if we add all the cardiac patients, and we do about 20% of all the machine time is cardiac. So if we add 20% of activity to the whole radiology imaging time, you can buy many more machines.
Yeah.
Anyway, you have the justification to buy every 2 years a machine and not every 3 years. So the ego can benefit from this situation because the growth is much bigger if you go together.
Let's move to the next.
Yeah.
The next is who? The last one is Mrs. Petropoulou, correct?